I do want to hit some big news that is all over the internet today. So I don't think we're necessarily giving a spoiler, but there was a report that Jeff Cobb has been granted his release to leave New Japan Pro Wrestling. And he's going to be having his last match on the 19th for New Japan against Tanahashi. That's this coming Saturday. And after that, well, most people believe he is headed to the WWE. Now, if he has his last match for New Japan on Saturday, a lot of people wonder, might we see him somewhere Sunday, or more importantly, the Monday after WrestleMania? But people are saying that about Rusev, and they're saying that about Aleister Black. I would even argue that the Monday after WrestleMania is going to have as much, perhaps even more anticipation for WrestleMania. Now, to people outside of the bubble, certainly WrestleMania is the big attraction, but the diehards, the hardcores, I feel like they're more interested to see who's debuting and what new storylines get kicked off the Monday after. Do you agree with that? And what do you know, if anything, about Jeff Cobb?
I completely agree with it. And I was looking at the shows that they've got in Vegas this weekend. So I'm going out there. I'm not going out for WWE because I want to give the misrep, the impression that I'm going to be out there with it. I'm not going out there with Raw, with WrestleCon, and I am bringing a couple of clotheslines just in case. But for some other shows, I believe that I might just decide to show up on. But I was looking at all the shows that are out there. How you're having to book this is amazing. Because, you're not booking one event. You're not booking Saturday night. You have to book things, starting earlier in the week. Then you book a show on Friday that has to lead into pay-per-view. That pay-per-view has to lead into another pay-per-view. Then that pay-per-view has to lead into Raw. But you've got so much content here with this guy, Jeff Cobb, with Rusev, with Aleister Black, with so much people wondering out there what's going to happen, that the anticipation is going to be huge. I don't know if there's going to be debuts because I don't know any of the creative, obviously. I think there will be, and I think that's going to be very exciting because I was looking at the card, and the card's fantastic. I think it's wonderful, but you look at it and you think, okay, there's going to be something else. Something else is going to happen. This is WrestleMania. It's WrestleMania weekend, and what's so cool about it is you don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know if it's going to happen on SmackDown, on WrestleMania 1, WrestleMania 2, or if it's going to happen on Monday Night Raw. And I think that's one of the things that people love for the weekend. That Monday Night Raw is so freaking fun. I remember when Dolph cashed in on Alberto, and I think we're in the Bronx after WrestleMania. That was one of the loudest reactions. I've never heard anything like that. That was freaking amazing. I mean, I was there when Seth cashed in doing commentary out in San Francisco. But that night after, that place went crazy when Dolph cashed in. I mean, they were so wanting to see something historic. And I think that they're probably going to see something historic on Monday. And I'm not giving away a potential spoiler or anything. I have no idea. I'm guessing like everybody else, but I'm guessing from a person who's been around a long time.
Of course, when AEW was debuting a lot of talent, seemingly one after another a handful of years ago, I mean, I think if memory serves, we saw Ruby Soho and Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson and Suzuki all debut on the same show. I could be off on that, but it almost feels like that's what we might be seeing happening soon with WWE. And it's already crowded. You've already got a lot of talent that you're trying to get on TV. And I mean, we just saw the debut of Rey Fenix, and not too far before that with Penta. And now, seemingly, if these reports are true, Mariah may be on the list, but we're led to believe maybe Jeff Cobb. We're led to believe maybe Aleister Black and maybe Rusev. Again, John and I have no inside information, but you probably don't want to have all of those talent debut immediately after WrestleMania because, well, I think Jim Cornette said, if you've got a locker room full of 7-footers, you ain't got no giants. Well, kind of the same thing here. How can I get excited about 5 people at once? Am I off base on that?
No. Oh my God, no, 100%. The thing that you do as a young promoter that I've seen it all my whole life is you'd hot shot it and you bring all these guys in and say, hey, look at all what we got, But then what do you do next week? You can't do that because you can't follow it. So no, I think it's going to come over the next couple of months, and I think that to me that's by far the best way to do it.
We're having a little fun talking about WrestleMania. We are indeed live with John. If you've got a question, keep them coming in. Let's do one before we start running down some of the WrestleMania card. Coach T wants to know, as someone who grew up as a wrestling fan, did you think back in the day that the WWF should have had a TV champion? Of course, we saw TV champions existed in the NWA and then later WCW and even ECW. But for all the different titles that WWE created through the years, they never had what they called a television champion. Did you think that was a missed opportunity as a fan when you were younger? And do you remember this even coming up with Vince in all your years?
No, I never remember it coming up. We created some titles. So we created, the obviously the Intercontinental title created, I guess, 1979 when Pat won it in that mysterious tournament down in Rio from Johnny Rods. I quoted Vince one time on air about that one time that he defeated Johnny, because that was the initial story, was he defeated Johnny Rods. And Vince's like, where'd you come up with that? From you. You said it years ago. And he had forgotten, which obviously wasn't important because obviously the tournament was a little mysterious. But you had the European title, then you had the hardcore title, you had 24/7 title. So you had all these different titles that have come up different times. For whatever reason, they just chose not to do a TV title. And I agree with that. I think it sounds more prestigious to have a European title, to have a hardcore title, to have an Intercontinental title, to have, titles for different shows. The WWE Championship, the World Championship, the Universal Championship, all that different stuff. The thing is, obviously what you're doing with this is when you have your champion is out, your Intercontinental champion or your European champion or your TV champion can headline the show with a title belt. And so, it's important to have that. Plus, it's important to have for extra storylines.
I could go with it a few different ways. I do like the idea behind a television title in terms of there's going to be rules that you have to be in order to win this belt. It's got to be in a certain time limit. But it always makes me chuckle when I see an independent promotion who has a TV title but no TV. Or, these days it feels like every promotion that has a television contract, well, they're not really running house shows. So effectively, every belt is the TV belt. So anyway, we could get down the rabbit hole. It's supposed to be fun. Sometimes it's not, though, and that's an unpleasant question we'll face here before we do our WrestleMania rundown. Guy W. Johns says, vitriol from some fans towards Charlotte, one of the best performers on the roster, seems oddly personal. Did she punch a baby or something? Now more than ever, I'm rooting for the queen at WrestleMania. I actually had a person who's not necessarily in the wrestling bubble, but caught up on some of that controversy last week, asked me about this, John. And I tried to explain because they wanted to know the same thing. Boy, she must be a great bad guy for everyone to seemingly feel this way. And I tried to explain, well, it's kind of like a few years ago, every football fan hated Alabama and every baseball fan once upon a time hated the Lakers, or, every basketball fan, or I'm going, the Yankees, the Lakers. There is this pushback in the NFL, man. It was like in fashion to dunk on and crap on the Patriots. Nobody liked the Patriots. And before that, it was the Cowboys. Like, I think fans on some level, it's just human nature. You want to see something different. I don't like that they keep winning. I don't like that Nick Saban people hated Nick Saban with no real reason to hate Nick Saban. They just hated the success. That's just the dynamic of human psychology, right, John?
Yeah, and what a babyface turn Nick Saban and Bill Belichick have had.
Yes. I
mean, these were the two most hated guys in sports. I mean, everybody hated those guys because they won so freaking much. And now all of a sudden they go on these talk shows and you listen to what they're talking about. It's like I played a little pro football. I coached in college. They're talking a game I don't understand. They're that freaking good. I listen to them. It's like, oh, my God. These guys are a different level than anybody I've ever heard. It's so fun to listen to those guys. And then you really see how personable that Nick Saban is, and Bill Belichick, which doesn't come across on television with them on the sidelines, getting upset and throwing headphones and things. And you realize why they were such good recruiters. I got to play one time. I was in a golf tournament in Tyler, Texas, a charity golf tournament, and I'll show up. They go, "Hey, we got a big treat for you today." I said, "What is it?" "You're playing with Barry Switzer." I said, "Was Saddam Hussein busy?" I said, because that's the most hated guy I've ever known is Barry Switzer in this state. So they put me with Barry Switzer. He was the nicest man. I wanted to hate him. And not really. He'd always been, our rival against Darryl Roll and Earl Campbell and those guys. He was the nicest freaking man. He was so fun to be out there with. You see why he was such a great recruiter. You see that with Nick Saban now and with Bill Belichick. Like these are really good dudes. You have to be at that level and to have the rapport that they had with their players. And the same thing is with Charlotte. When you win so long, people are going to hate you. People want to hate what's great. you turn on them eventually. You turn on the Bulls eventually back in the 90s. And to me, that's all that is. There's really not a lot more than that. And if people are turning on Charlotte, so what? She's going to be in a title match at WrestleMania.
Yeah, it's easy, to see where it comes from. She just keeps winning, and people hate a winner in all sports.
Yeah, and she's a fantastic athlete who has incredible matches.
No doubt. And by the way, she's a heel, so you hating her is kind of the plan. Ryan Heffron, of course, we know him as the Blue Meanie. He's got a fun story about that TV title idea. He says, related to a TV title with no TV, I once did a show with a tag team who called themselves the Kansas City Outlaws, and they were billed from parts unknown. How great is that? Kansas City Outlaws.
It's the best. Some of these guys come up with these names. It's just unbelievable. And you see them, you think, do you really think that's going to work? I mean, do you really believe, like when you look in the mirror at that and you're from parts unknown and you're the Kansas City Outlaw, do you really think that all of that's really a good idea? You just want to ask them and get in their mind and find out how that came about.